Carl Reiner played a very big part in television and film world. He has been behind a lot of television shows that I grew up watching, and his comedy humor was amazing. But one person here at AZTV's family worked with him personally, and that is our Pat McMahon. One thing I love about my job, and that is Pat McMahon and the history that he holds in this business of entertainment. We've lost a great man, a great director, a great writer. You got to work with this man personally, Carl Reiner, who I actually studied when I was at Second City in Chicago, because they said, you want comic timing, Carl Reiner in his writing of all the shows that he's done. People don't realize the history of Carl Reiner and the shows that he's done and stuff, and the movies. It's so amazing. But you, Pat, right here, have worked with the man.
Yeah, and the shows that he's done kind of began, as far as network shows, with a show that I watched when I was a kid in school, and that was, yes, there was television when I was a kid in school, but it was called Your Show of Shows, mostly known as the show that starred Sid Caesar and Imogene Coca and so on. And he was a writer on the show, along with his buddy Mel Brooks, along with Neil Simon. That was part of the writing staff of Your Show of Shows. And I used to watch this, and it was absolutely one of my favorite shows in the world. And one of the things that they did was this peculiar two-man comedy thing with Carl Reiner as the straight man and Mel Brooks as the 2,000-year-old man.
Yeah.
Right? And it started off at cocktail parties, and they said, no, you got to do this, you got to do this. So that's how I kind of became acquainted as a fan of Carl Reiner. And then, of course, later on, the Dick Van Dyke Show and so many things.
Anybody, I have always said that I like you so much better without your...
It's hair! You didn't have any trouble saying it on television. When did you ever see me without my hair?
Well, a couple of times. Remember the time on your boat when you fell overboard?
You bumped into me.
No, you tripped over Rob.
You hear that, fellas? The whole family's after me.
Well, when Dick moved his new show, the new Dick Van Dyke Show, out here to the Cave Creek Paradise Valley Studios, one time, because he was kind of a fan of the Wallace and Ladmore show, someone called and said, we've got a kid show character that we want to do. And the new Dick Van Dyke Show, he was a talk show host in Phoenix, Arizona. And I said, well, that sounds terrific.
Yeah.
And so I did this bizarre character called Cheek Eye the Clown.
Now on me. Now I'm a puppet. Welcome to the Dick Preston Show, gang, starring Dick Preston. We've got an entire show, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. We'll call you.
Yeah, but don't you want to hear us sing, too? I dance. Look at this, huh?
We've seen that.
I do impression. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I can't see. I can't see. I've got more eyes under the hat.
Would you get his name, Mike?
Well, when we sat down the first day of the week for the table read, where we're all sitting around a table just going over the lines, all of a sudden, who walks in as the director of the show but Carl Reiner?
Wow.
I almost fell down. I mean, that was one of those moments when I became a kid again. I became a fan. Yeah. And just working with him in that capacity. He also did a character on that episode.
The performer was sick, so he came right over to help me out. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend and my buddy, Mr. Carl Reiner.
But what an amazing talent. And one of the things I will tell you, Brad, that I envy in Carl Reiner's life is that he got to know Mel Brooks.
in the origin of words. For instance, a simple word like cheese. Where did that come from?
Cheese is a lovely story, how we get the word cheese in our vernacular. In the year 28 there was an old farmer, and a gentleman came to his land and said, "I'm so thirsty, may I have a little dipper milk?" And he said, "Certainly, go over to the barrel." He not knowing that the barrel of milk had soured, see? So this poor beggar man came to the barrel and opened up from the top and looked in and looked down and went, "Cheese!"
That's the word.
That's how the word cheese came into being.
So when he walked in that room and it's Carl Reiner, were you just like, I'm going to be like now be a bigger star than I am now? He's going to take me to Hollywood with him. We're going.
No, I didn't think in those terms, because I don't know what it is other than an enormous amount of money that would get me to move from Phoenix to Los Angeles. But no, it was such a surprise. I had done another episode of the new Dick Van Dyke Show, directed by, of all people, Harvey Korman.
Wow.
Dick used to just simply bring whomever it is that he wanted. He would just call somebody and say, "You want to come over and direct this episode?" And it was Dick Van Dyke.
Wow. Yeah, and you can actually watch Dick Van Dyke on our sister station, metv.com, so you can go watch it over there. I do want to say something about Carl Reiner, and I think that it's very interesting that people don't realize, but he actually is one of the people who started to help other minorities in the business. I mean, even on the Dick Van Dyke Show, he was one of the first people to kind of like bring on someone of color into a comedy show in a way, and brought him into a positive light, which was really great.
And he continued to live his life like that, too. He also continued to live his life with Mel Brooks, because they had a one-night dinner established at one house or the other for years. He and his wife were married for 65 years. And of course, we all know that Rob Reiner continues to work very successfully in the business.
Yeah.
Gonna miss Carl.
It is. And you can actually go on to, I believe it's HBO or Netflix, I remember, and there is actually the Mel Brooks documentary kind of, and it does have him going to Carl Reiner's house and them sitting down and talking, which is really great. So,
wasn't that fun?
Yeah, it's really good. Pat, it's always great to get a little history from you.
Absolutely. What a team this is, right? Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks, Brad and Pat. Does it get any better?
No, it doesn't. Thank you, Pat.